All right, welcome in everybody. The 15th episode of the Rob Ellis Show here on the A2D radio. Yes, great to be with you guys on this Monday. So we kind of switched it up a little bit. Normally it's a guest format where we sit down and learn about the life and the career of our guests. But today, man, I am flying solo and I'm thrilled to be doing this. We'll be doing this pretty much every other week where I am just going to jump in there and talk to you guys about the state of sports, in particular, what's happening in Philadelphia sports. And I think we picked a pretty good day, pretty darn good day to be rocking this out with everything that's happening here. So let's start with this one here, guys. And look, I'm let everybody know I'm wearing the hoodie. It's symbolic, right? It is symbolic that I'm wearing the hoodie right now for the Sixers, because I don't know if you got a chance to see it yet. If you're just waking up, I know it's Monday, so everybody's kind of groggy a little bit from the weekend. But James Harden was in China, essentially speaking to a group of kids, and called Daryl Morey a liar and said he will never play for an organization that Daryl Morey is a part of. So let's start with that because we got a lot of other stuff to get to, including the Eagles and impressions of the first preseason game, joint practices beginning tonight with the Browns, and then, of course, the Phillies, who lost 2 out of 3 over the weekend to the Twins, 6-4 on the homestand. So let's start with the Sixers situation here with James Harden. So what this is, this essentially is James Harden throwing down the gauntlet, not happy that he hasn't been moved yet, knows that training camp and the season is not all that far off at this point. And this is his way to really kind of dig in here and fire that first salvo. Now, keep in mind, too, this has worked for him wherever he was. He wanted out of Houston. He put the fat suit on. He decided that I'm going to go to the strip clubs and screw you and all that other stuff. So he gets traded to Brooklyn, where he wanted to go. He decided he had enough of Brooklyn. He wanted to go join Daryl Morey and the Sixers. He got what he wanted. So anytime he's put pressure on organizations, he's gotten what he's wanted. And he's been moved on to teams that he wanted to go to. And it's also a league that has empowered the players to the point where they really hold the cards. They have more control and more power than the owners and the GMs. So just know that everything that's happening here with that sort of background. Now, if you're Daryl Morey and the Sixers, you can basically say, hey, man, go pound sand. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to move you, and you will not gain your free agency after this year if you sit the entire year out. They could do that. But what ultimately ends up happening a lot of times is organizations and general managers cave. They give in to the public pressure, et cetera. What's going to happen in Philadelphia is James Harden was already a disliked guy. Now he goes from dislike to, public enemy number 1, right? So the fans are going to be screaming and yelling for the Sixers to trade him, for the Sixers to move on, get this guy out of here, get some value in return, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So when that kind of thing happens, whether you're Josh Harris, whether you're Daryl Morey, whomever else, basically, and Michael, I agree with you. And by the way, you guys want to jump in with questions in the chat section? What's up, Jake? You want to jump in there? Feel free. Fire questions away. I got you, solo. You want to hit me with anything you want to hit me with. Let's do this thing. What happens is, because there's public pressure and because the owners and the GMs look at it and they say, we don't want to take this kind of heat all year from the fan base. Let's just get something, addition by subtraction, et cetera, et cetera. What I think will end up happening eventually, I don't know if it'll happen before the season started. I've said all along I thought he would not be a Sixer when the season starts, and I'll stand by that. I still think they'll move him. But if they do start the season and he's here, when I say here, it doesn't necessarily mean playing. But appreciate it, Steven. Thank you, man. Much love to you as well. I think eventually he will be moved, and it'll probably be for something the equivalent of a bag of balls. But the question I would ask James Harden, and if he throws that out there in a setting where he's in a foreign land, there aren't reporters there, et cetera, where he calls Morey a liar and says he won't play for the team because there aren't people there that can follow up with questions. Why did you opt in? Simple question. If you already knew then Daryl Morey was a liar, right? Or at least in your estimation, your words, not my words, is a liar, and you won't play for that organization, why'd you opt in? We all know why he opted in, because there weren't any other options. There was nobody else that was going to pay him 35, 36 million a year and give him multiple years. I mean, that's what this comes down to. So he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. He wants to opt in, make sure he guarantees himself that kind of money for the year, and then, force the Sixers to trade him somewhere. What'll end up happening is he'll get traded somewhere and he'll be a good soldier for that year, because he knows he has to be a good soldier in order to get money comparable or somewhere near there, or get a multi-year deal. You watch, wherever he ends up, he will be on his best behavior because he's a phony. That's what it is. Were the Clippers not willing to give up Terrence Mann? Good question. Good question. It's Howie's vision. We're all just living in it. Yes, I love the handle too. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think initially what the Sixers wanted from the Clippers was some form of Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, maybe picks, or just one of those guys, which I would have settled for, by the way, and been perfectly happy with that. I like both of those players. They're not giant names, but I would have taken either one of those two guys. So I don't quite understand exactly what the reasoning is behind it. What the timing is pretty obvious right now, that why this is happening, because he wants to just up the ante here and force their hand. Now, here's the other part. Let's not let Daryl Morey off the hook here unscathed. Ultimately he came here as this sort of wonderkin, this guy who's he's been great everywhere he's been. Look at what he did in Houston, blah, 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 blah. Has this team improved? I mean, that's a question that I'll ask. Has this team improved? The answer is no. They haven't gotten out of the second round. They actually lost a lot of depth this offseason because they've painted themselves into a corner with bad contracts, right? So I don't think this team's gotten better under Daryl Morey. Like, to me, this is like a lose-lose. Morey hasn't done a good enough job. When you mess with James Harden, eventually bad things happen. And I'm not even so much killing them for the trade. I mean, the whole situation with Simmons was a disaster. And I don't really fault the Sixers for that. I fault Simmons. And you had to move him. And you ended up getting a player, that's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. I mean, whatever you think about James Harden, he is that guy. But I think ultimately they did the right thing not extending him. I think he's on the downward slide, and I think it's going to be a precipitous, decline for him. And I wouldn't have given him that money either. So I don't blame the Sixers necessarily. What up, Coach Marcus? I see you on there. Good to hear from Coach Marcus as always, and check out all the great work that he's doing as well. Pro Fan Talk. But yeah, I mean, for me, like, this thing had disaster written all over it to begin with for this season. And here we are, right? In case you were wondering, get the message out there before football season it gets really cranked and it all gets lost in that. Do it now. It's all calculated. It was not by happenstance that James Harden dropped this. He and his agent have plotted this, and they're doing it right now, and they're going to continue to turn up the heat. Now, I don't know if Daryl Morey can help himself or not, because he's generally one who feels the need to get cute during these times with some kind of tweet or GIF or meme, or whatever you're throwing out there. Anything. He'll throw stuff out there. If he was smart, he'd lay low, but I don't know that he is. So the best approach for the Sixers this season would be, and I don't know how you pacify Embiid if that's the case, but they're going to have to figure that part of it out. Ride it out this year. Get Harden off the books if he continues to stay here, which I don't think he will, but whatever. You essentially owe two guys money next year. And it's Embiid and it's PJ Tucker. And you can be a real player in free agency. You can be a player in terms of trades. You can do a lot of different things if you're the Sixers. And according to it, it's how he says, no, the team hasn't improved. Morey needs to focus on building around Maxey and Embiid, get what you can from him and move on. I believe in Maxey. Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think your sentiments are pretty much on. Turn this thing over to Maxey. Let it be his team with Embiid. Let him play the point. Let him see if he can develop some of the, some of the basic fundamental kind of stuff that you need to be able to do in terms of running an offense, getting others involved, feeding Embiid in the right spots, those kind of things. I mean, that's critical to point guard play. Right now, he's more of a 2 in a 1's body. But look, I'm a big fan. He's got to improve his defense as much as he can. I don't think he's ever going to be a shutdown defender, but be a comparable defender, and be a guy who figures out how to distribute the ball. That's what I'm looking for from Maxey more than anything else. But make no mistake, this has been, the fan base has been through a lot. You had the process where they were losing on purpose. The fans accepted it, embraced it in a lot of cases, and backed it. And ultimately, the payoff has been a second round exit for them. The fans have every right to be out of patience with this and be ticked off with everything that's happening now. And this whole thing with Harden just upped the ante. I mean, that's basically what happened. I mean, the ante just got upped here in a big way by James Harden. The question is, how do the Sixers respond? Do they simply respond, by saying, hey, we hold the cards here? And you could do that, and you could really try to just stick it to James Harden, or you move on, get him out of here, get the distraction out of here, and you try and play basketball this year. I think ultimately they will move on from him. That's just my guess. But believe me, this is not the final chapter here. There is going to be a lot of things to go, and this is a very fluid situation for sure. So there's the Sixers situation. Let's move over to the Eagles here. First preseason game on Saturday night, and couple of impressions. Let's start with the positive here, because there were some things to like. If you didn't see the game, I'm sure you saw the highlight. The play that Jalen Carter makes, and I know I'm going singular play here, but he didn't have that many reps. What you saw there is what he is, what he's capable of. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's Howie's vision. Thank you. The speed, the power, the football smarts, like he knew. He played with that player, played with that guard, Cleveland, in Georgia. Last name's Cleveland, in Georgia. And he studied the film of what he's been doing, what he's done. He knows that guy, right? That's good. Like, that to me tells me the young guy's working and putting in the film work. And what he ended up doing, I agree with you, Michael. I really like what I saw too. And I'll get to the running backs in 1 second, but you make a great point. What I really liked that I saw there was the speed, the power, the finish, and I think that's what he's capable of. This to me is the difference between Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, at least right now. Jalen Carter to me is a 3-down defensive tackle, an interior defensive lineman, meaning he can get after the quarterback. He can stuff the run. He can cause impact and havoc all over the place. And he can also occupy blockers to let other guys make plays. He is going to be a force. I've said it all along. I think he will be in every discussion for NFL Rookie of the Year if he stays healthy, and nothing's changed. To see that play was nice. It was nice to see it at the NFL level, but anybody who watched him at Georgia knew that there wasn't any question about how much he could play or how he could play or how well he could play. It really comes down to, can he just stay focused and do the right things off the field? And if that's the case, the Eagles got themselves a steal where they got Jalen Carter. That was certainly a positive. You got to love what you got from DeAndre Swift. Again, it was basically one play, but you saw on full display everything that DeAndre Swift had. The ability to make somebody miss in space, right? And then what I love too is the way he finished the run. Dips the shoulder and crushes the Raven defender. And it was like, whoa. And it was interesting, that Nick Sirianni elected to go with the players that we presume were the first team guys. In other words, DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. We all just sort of assume like they're 1-2 on the depth chart. Then it's Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott. Like, for me, now you have to sort of wonder a little bit. I've always thought all along that DeAndre Swift was going to be the number one guy, but there are people who would argue that Swift, beyond Swift, that the number two guy really is Kenneth Gainwell. And in some cases, some people think he might be the number one. And Rashad Penny isn't a lock to make this team. He's not guaranteed any money. He's not making a lot of money. And look, he looked okay when he got in there. You don't see a lot of burst from Rashad Penny. Nick Sirianni said, don't read too much into that. We could very easily dress Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott on Thursday, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see. I think he probably will. I'm really good if I don't see Swift anymore, frankly, with his injury history. Just be careful with him for the two games that are left. Now, they start the open practices tonight against Cleveland. You get two of those and then, shut it down on Wednesday before the game on Thursday. But this is what they really value as coaches, way more than the preseason games. The open practices is where they can open it up a little bit more, really dip into the playbook of what they're going to do in the regular season because there aren't cameras on them. So, the coaches learn more from these two open practices than they do, I think, in a lot of ways from the preseason game. But that said, let me just stay on the positives here. I really, really liked what I saw from Trey Sermon. I thought he ran hard. I thought he ran well. The other thing is his blitz pickup a couple of times was just phenomenal. It's tough. It's a crowded running back room. There's 4 guys right now, and I don't know where he fits. I wish he was a returner. I wish he could provide something in that aspect, but it's not really his game. But this guy belongs on an NFL roster, and if it's not here, and if he ends up on the practice squad, I think somebody will grab him up. But I really loved what I saw from Trey Sermon. So that was another positive for me. Really liked the way Nolan Smith made an impact. It's not going to show up in the stat sheet in terms of sacks or tackles or anything like that. But, there's the strength, the burst, the quickness. I also think there's just a drive there with Nolan Smith. I think he's a guy the fans are going to fall in love with real quick. He's that type because I think he's a motor guy. He's an energy guy. He's a play every down. It doesn't matter what the situation is, go hard kind of guy. And I think they're the kind of players that really appeal to Philadelphia fans. I think on top of it, he can play. So I liked what I saw from Nolan Smith. Of course, Sidney Brown was all over the place. That sort of sideline to sideline speed that you saw. I really liked there was a play that he wrapped up really well in the open field on a running back. And the knock on him coming out of Illinois was, yes, he was sort of a heat-seeking missile and throw his body around, but he wasn't a good form tackler. And man, was that ever a good form tackle that we saw out of Sidney Brown. So let's hold that on the positives. We get back, I'll tell you some of the things that I didn't necessarily love from the game. One in particular that concerns me, which we'll get into. And again, understood it's only one preseason game. You don't go crazy over it, but all we can go off of is what we saw. So we'll get a little bit more into the Eagles. We're going to dip into the Phillies as well. As I mentioned, they lose 2 or 3 to the Twins over the weekend. All in all, 6-4 on the homestand. But I want to tie that in to our agree to disagree question of the day. Have Philadelphia sports fans gotten softer these days? All right, that is our agree to disagree. I want you to hop in there in the chat and let me know what you think. Have Philadelphia sports fans, do you agree or disagree? Philadelphia sports fans are softer than in years past. I'll answer that question. I'll tell you if I agree or disagree when we get back as well. You are watching the Rob Ellis Show on A2D Radio. Right back.
Hey Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we're back. Rob Ellis Show, A2D. Believe this, we're up to episode number 15. Man, how did that happen? Time flies when you're having fun, but I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Always fun, always fun. All right, let's go to the things I didn't necessarily love from the preseason game. Marcus Mariota, to me, you saw the ability to scramble, and there's no doubt about that. Like, he certainly still has that attribute and then some. And you saw him take off a couple times and get there. Michael, here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know about the solid part. I worry about his ability to throw the football. And, when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who will tend to run the ball. And when he has the ball in his hands that much between passing and throwing, the odds increase that he could possibly get hurt. We've seen it the last 2 years. Now, thankfully, it wasn't anything major, last year, and he's able to come back, and we saw how great he was in the Super Bowl. So that's a positive, and, knocking on wood that he doesn't go down this year. But if he does, you need somebody to come in there who's at least competent. And I think the Eagles are going to be in a lot more close games than they were last year. I mean, for the most part, especially early in the season, the games weren't all that competitive. And I think they're going to be a lot closer this year. So what I'm driving at is, if you're in a close game or you're trailing, you may need your quarterback to throw you back into it. And I don't know that Mariota can do this. playing against, in some cases, the twos on Saturday night against Baltimore, it should have looked a little bit smoother in terms of his throwing. Now, what I will say is he's playing with second string receivers, second string tight end, second string offensive line. So that you have to take all those things into account when you're measuring him and grading him out. But I wanted to see a little bit more from Marcus Mariota in terms of throwing. If I'm Nick Sirianni, and I don't think we're seeing Jalen Hurts, but if I'm Nick Sirianni, Mariota gets the whole half against the Browns on Thursday night. And then I go Tanner McKee, and then maybe sneak in a little Ian Book. But Jake, I agree with you. Tanner McKee looked really comfortable, poised. It didn't look like it was, in any way, shape, or form. He looked like he belonged, and he felt like he belonged. He didn't look overwhelmed. I like the way he drove the ball a couple of times with some stick passes. And I also thought he put really nice touches on some of those back shoulder fades to, the Eagles, the sort of no-name receivers the Eagles have, they're big. Tyree Cleveland's big. Joseph Nagata's big. They bring in the guy Johnny King, who's 6'5". I mean, they have some big dudes and nice targets out there. But, yeah, I was, frankly, pleasantly surprised by McKee. He just looked poised, and the moment wasn't too big for him, and he made all the throws that you need to make in the NFL more than anything else. And by comparison, threw it a lot better than Mariota threw it. And then, Ian Book, when he came in after Tanner McKee, was frankly kind of a disaster. But, I mean, let's face it. If you're getting down to your third and fourth string quarterback, odds are you're cooked anyway. But McKee went a long way with how he played, and certainly he's got some ways to go here, but I think he cemented himself, or at least went a long way to cementing himself as the number 3 quarterback for the Eagles. And I think Ian Book might be either practice squad or in a little bit of trouble there. That's for sure. The other one, and this wasn't anything really major. I just wanted to see something from him. I wanted to see Jordan Davis make a couple of plays. I understand he didn't get a lot of playing time, and it wasn't going to be a whole lot. But I wanted to see him in there, kind of like I saw Jalen Carter flash for that play. I wanted to see a little bit of that from Jordan Davis. So slightly disappointed in that. Let me give you a couple other good things that happened in this game as well. I mentioned Cleveland and Nagata. I really like what they've done. Eli Ricks with the read on that pick 6, and he's had a good camp so far, and he's got the good pedigree, with where he went to college. Making a play like that. And a lot of this comes down to, with those kind of guys who are going to be backups, how good are they on special teams? And there's going to be a spot open because, unfortunately, Sean Bradley tore his Achilles and he's out for the season. That's a blow to the Eagles special teams. Make no mistake. So there's an opportunity there for somebody, if they can, make the squad as a, say, backup corner or backup safety who can also play on special teams. So keep that in mind, when you're talking about an Eli Ricks or somebody like that. But, all in all, I mean, let's face it, with the analysis part aside, it was just great to see football being back. I don't know about you guys. In addition to watching the Eagles, I was on the NFL Network the whole weekend, and just all right, let me see how he looks. Let me see what's going on here, and what's this team doing, and they have a new coach, and how does this quarterback look? Frankly, I was surprised at how many teams still play either their starting quarterback or their ones in the early going here in preseason. It's, a departure from what the Eagles do, that's for sure. And I'm not arguing with the Eagles, the method to the madness, because they were as healthy as any team last season. That's for sure. So there's that from an Eagle standpoint. And again, the open practices tonight and tomorrow, and then the game on Thursday, where I think we'll see a little bit more of some of the ones or guys who could be getting, critical playing time. They'll be in there playing, and be interesting to see what Nick Sirianni does with the running backs. Will he flip it from what he did on Saturday night, and you're going to get Gainwell and Boston Scott? I think he wants to be a little bit careful with some of those guys. I think he was very happy to get DeAndre Swift out of there after making a couple of plays. But all in all, good to get football back. That's for sure. All right, let's hop over now to the Phillies. They lose 2 or 3 over the weekend to the Twins. What they looked like to me more than anything else was a team that ran out of gas. Even though they had the off day on Monday with the rain day, they look like a tired bunch. It's good that they're off today. They only play 2 in Toronto, and then they get off Thursday as well before they go to Washington for the weekend. But the hitters, to me, look like they ran out of gas a little bit. I know the headline for most people from the game is going to be terrible umpiring. And there's no doubt that the home plate umpire stunk yesterday and was inconsistent. And that, you saw it with the Bohm call. You saw it with Harper. You saw it with others throughout the course of the game. He was bad. And that was a costly spot because if Bohm gets on there, it's a 1-run game with Harper coming up with the bases juiced. I mean, it's a completely different story there. But nonetheless, you got to do better than scoring 1 run in the last 2 games of that series. I mean, flat out. The offense was non-existent. They were bad with runners in scoring position. It was not a real good showing. And I know they faced a couple of good pitchers in Lopez and Sonny Gray, but you're going to be facing good pitching come playoff time. So you can't just beat up on, Kansas City and other bad teams and the Nats, with their bad pitching. You got to be able to hit the big boys too. So the offense has got to be better. All in all, good homestand. 6-4, solid. You made up some ground thanks to other teams losing, and now you're in first place in the wild card. You got a game and a half on the Giants. You're 3 up from the third place team. So you were able to make a little bit of movement there. I think the other thing that you take away from this homestand, and this will tie into our agree to disagree question. And our agree to disagree question of the day is, have Philadelphia sports fans gotten softer than in years past? Agree or disagree? I'll agree in this sense. Softer is a bit of a tough word, but here's what I mean by that. I think we've gotten more empathetic and understanding of certain situations. Like when it came to Trea Turner, it was clear that this guy was kind of lost. And he really needed a pat on the rear end more than he needed anything else. Like to further kick him and boo him. Ultimately, as a Phillies fan, you want him to turn it around because he can lead to your team having success, right? I mean, so the ultimate objective or want, if you're a Phillies fan, is for him to do well. And booing him was, I don't think, going to get the best out of him because he already accepted accountability. He was responsible for what went on. He said it. He said as much. In Miami, he said, I blew the game for us. I'm not playing well. You just saw it in his eyes. And I think the fans recognized that and showed support, and it worked because he has flipped the script completely and played great. But I think that doesn't happen if there isn't the precedent of Alec Bohm the year before. Alec Bohm says something, and I'd rather be anywhere else. I hate this bleeping place, whatever. That night takes accountability for it. Sets about getting better as a baseball player, which I think was really, impressive also. Got better. Okay. And Coach Marcus, soft, no. Comfortable, yes. I've never seen the Trea Turner treatment in Philly before. It did happen with Bohm. It did happen with Bohm where they supported him after he's playing poorly and he came out and said what he said, and it helped Bohm. And I think had that not happened with Bohm, it would not have happened, 2 Fridays ago. I don't believe that. But one other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about this, if you go back to the Sixers with Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, we tend to forget it now because, there's a lot of water under the bridge and there's a lot of revisionist history. But if you go back to what happened, do you remember Markelle Fultz kind of support he got when he forgot how to shoot? Every time he touched the ball, he was cheered. Every time he attempted a jump shot, even whether it went in or not, he got cheered. When he got a triple-double in a meaningless game, the last game of the regular season against the Heat, with playoffs already locked up and seedings already locked up, the fans went crazy for him. He had unconditional love. They were trying to will him to be the guy that they took first overall. People tend to forget that, but that did take place with the fans. Same thing with Ben Simmons until the very end when he really showed who he was. They supported him. They supported him on the free throw line. They supported him the rare time that he even had the balls to attempt a jump shot. They cheered him on. So the notion that the Philadelphia sports fan just hammers every time isn't the case, at least with their own. Yeah, with road teams, of course, all bets are off. You're going to hear it. That's why there's such a great home field advantage. So let me swing this back for a minute. You know what I want to do? First off, we're going to get a quick timeout in here. We will sneak in a quick timeout. But when we come back, I want to get in a little bit further to the Phillies and kind of where things are headed for them. And we could dig in a little bit more on our agree to disagree question. Have Philadelphia fans gotten softer? I say yes, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think they've kind of changed the approach to the way things are done. That's the way I view it, at least with this. All right, so let's sneak in another quick break. I'll come in and we'll put a bow on this bad boy on the 15th episode of the Rob Ellis Show right here on A2D Radio. Right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, back. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Great interaction with the chat. Let's keep that rolling as well. All right, we were discussing, the approach to the fans and whatnot. Look, here's the thing. Just to get back to the whole have they gotten softer or not. So this is now 2 instances in a row where, specifically with the Phillies, where fan support has really benefited the player in the club. The thing that I was really struck by more than anything else, Trea Turner, obviously, it really touched him, right? You talk about his mother crying and all this other stuff. But I think it really sunk in with the players. And they all, to a man, and it wasn't the usual cliches. It wasn't, yeah, we love the fan support. They're the best, the fans around, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't that. It was deeper. If you listen to some of the things that Bryce Harper said on WIP after the game last Sunday, if you listen to some of the other players, Rob Thompson, like Michael Lorenzen said it as well, who's only been here for a short period of time. It's different, and the connection is different. You have 2 highly likable teams too, which help, and who are winning in the Phillies and the Eagles. I mean, there isn't one player for my money on the Eagles that is dislikable. And I don't think there's anybody really on the Phillies who's dislikable either. Now, the Sixers are the polar opposite, and the Flyers are still in the sort of who cares category until they start to get better. But that part of it helps. But I truly believe like each player really felt the impact of the support that they gave Turner, and in turn supported the team that way. And I think it was a turning point, I think, last year during the postseason for the Phillies fans and them, when the place was sold out and rocking, because they hadn't gotten that the entire regular season last year. So it was kind of eye-opening. That support has really carried over this year. The attendance has been awesome. I was down there yesterday. I did a pregame show for WIP, but it was incredible. Just the crowds that they're drawing there each and every home game. It's awesome. So I think it helped. And I think that we will be seeing more of that, whether some sort of old school fans like it or not. I think we'll be seeing more of that going forward. But back to the team here. We're really getting to the stretch run here, almost mid-August at this point. What I like is the bats have started to turn this thing around. Whether it was Turner, whether it's Harper getting the power stroke, Castellanos really looks like he's back to the, first half Castellanos before the All-Star break when he kind of hit a wall. All those things, along with what Bohm and Stott have done for them all year, and an improved defense because you're getting Rojas out there, you'll get Pache out there, guys who can really track the ball. That all those things bode well for the playoffs. I think what worries me a little bit, I think the pitching that's been so consistent for them all year has kind of hit a wall a little bit. They look tired to me. Like, I think it's a very smart move to skip Taijuan Walker's next start. He looks like he could use it. And this is the advantage of having the 6-man rotation, adding Michael Lorenzen. This is where the genius of Dave Dombrowski, a GM who's actually doing something, Dave Dombrowski, unlike Daryl Morey. But adding Lorenzen allows you a little bit of flexibility. It also helps that they have 2 days off this week on Tuesday and Thursday. So you can play around a little bit. Walker looks a little tired. Nola's been all over the place. Frankly, I can't tell you no idea what you're going to get from start to start with Nola. You just don't know. Wheeler looks good for the most part. Lorenzen's looked spectacular. And the good news is, even though they lost yesterday, Ranger Suarez appears to have regained his form here in August from what was a rough July for him. Great June, rough July. So it's kind of up and down in the rotation. The bullpen really needs Alvarado back. You've asked a lot all year of Craig Kimbrell, and he's been, for the most part, excellent and giving you way more than I think they anticipated, but he looks like he's a little bit tired. And I still don't trust Gregory Soto. I just feel like he's either lights out or a disaster and doesn't generally work his way out of any kind of jams. He worries me. I think there's too many important innings being given to Hoffman at this point, and I don't necessarily blame the Phillies. They're just a little bit shorthanded. Hopefully, Sir Anthony Dominguez can, continue to round into form here as we go down the stretch. Look, it would be spectacular if you had a back end of Kimbrell and Sir Anthony and Alvarado and Soto. That's a strong back end of the bullpen. But I just think these guys, they could use a little bit of a break. And I think having the off day today and an off day on Thursday as well will really help those guys out. I'm hoping that bullpen can get going. I still think they're the best wild card team. I think they're probably the third best team in the National League. Certainly Atlanta and the Dodgers, but I think the Phillies come in, third there. And baseball playoffs are weird. You just don't know. A lot of it's momentum. You get a well-pitched game. Crazy things happen, especially in the early, shorter series in the wild card round. We know that. We saw the comeback that the Phillies had last year in St. Louis and what they were able to do. So I think that's something, for sure to keep your eye on here going forward is the bullpen, particularly the back end of the bullpen. And can some of the starters like Taijuan Walker regain his form? I think with the Phillies hitting right now, I think with the overall pitching, I think the experience of what they went through last year will help them in a really big way. There's not a moment that the core group of these guys haven't seen. And they have a really good mix of young players who look like they've been playing for 10 years. Alec Bowman's stat look like they've been around for a long time. A nice combination of those kind of guys and then all the veterans. Let me throw one more guy in there that I really hope. We saw some flashes here in this homestand. I hope Real Muto can really start hitting better. It was a rough first half. He kind of was, I think, went under the radar a little bit because of some of the other guys, because of Turner's struggles and how it's kind of all or nothing with Schwarber. But if JT Real Muto can start hitting and be a little bit more consistent, and he really, if you remember last year in the second half, he carried them in a lot of ways. He got hot. He's streaky. The tough part about this team is you do have some very streaky guys. Schwarber streaky, Real Muto streaky. Harper can be streaky too. Hopefully the bad part of the streaky Turner is over with. It does look that way. He just looks like a completely different player. But for the most part, I think things are going in the right direction for the Phillies. And I think we're in for a fun playoff run. And just think about this too. We get to late September into October. Remember how last year was? If you get playoff baseball, and I feel pretty confident that we will, and a bit of a run, which I feel pretty confident that we will, there's nothing better than during the week, at least in terms of the regular season, you have critical games going down the stretch during the week. And then, Eagles football on Sunday or Monday or Thursday or whatever. But having the two converge, it's so much fun. And then when it gets to the playoffs, man, that's what it's all about if you're a fan. To have that those dual worlds there going at the same time, pretty cool. So look, all in all, I think just to recap everything, I think Harden, the situation's a disaster and the fan base has had enough in general. So that's a powder keg waiting to happen, but he's trying to force their hand. And I think eventually most teams cave to the player because the player seems to have all the power in that league. So I think eventually the Sixers will cave and he'll be moved. And it's not going to be anything that's going to knock your socks off. I can tell you that much. Eagles wise, so far so good. They did have the one injury to Sean Bradley, but the biggest thing is they came out of that game, other than that, clean health wise. You are not going to see the big boys. That's just the way they approach it. But we'll get reports from these joint practices this week and we'll be able to learn a little bit more leading into the game on Thursday night and then the following Thursday. And then the toughest part is you got to last 17 days between that final preseason game and the regular season opener. That is not easy. And then Phillies wise off. And then in Toronto, Toronto team, you're going to have to put up some runs against them the next 2 days. I can't wait for that Giants series later in August with Gabe Kapler here. That's going to be a lot of fun and potentially a playoff series with Gabe Kapler and the Giants should be fun as well. All right. Like I said, we'll do this every other week where we'll just kind of get down with it, hang out, talk some sports and just kind of bat it around a little bit here. And great interaction from everybody in the chat. Listen, tell a friend if you could. Pass the word on. Let's get this out there about the Rob Ellis Show and what we do here between the great guests and the great sports talk. But I appreciate all you guys, and a big thanks to Ralph and Tom and the crew for getting the show off the ground. All right, that'll do it for me. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys next week as well. You've been watching the Rob Ellis Show on A2D.